We're going to talk about hand planes. Hand planes are different types, and basically hand planes are to take material off of either the face or edge of material. This basically is a block plane, and it's designed primarily for taking the material off of the end grain of a piece of material. When you do that, you go from one side part way in, and then go from the other side the rest of the way. And this is a block plane for taking the end grain off on a piece of material. This plane is a larger version. It's a basic construction is basically the same basic idea, and this is called a smooth plane. Okay, the handle basically is right on the back or the end of the plane. The other plane that we have is a junior jack plane, and the reason it's called a junior is just because it's a smaller version of a regular jack plane, whereas the handle is away from the end of the plane away. Most of the planing that you will do in your shop class will be done with a junior jack plane. When you're using this machine or this tool, there's some things that maybe you will need to do, and one thing is to take the blade out, because you may get debris caught up into your tool, and you'll need to get it out. So this is the blade, or this is the part that does the cutting. If it gets dull, of course it doesn't work as well, so therefore it will need to be sharpened. You can use the lever cap to undo the screw, turn it sideways, pull it off and take this out, and ask your instructor if he will please sharpen your plane blade for you. Do not sharpen it yourself. Put it back together. The bevel side goes up towards you. Slip it over, turn it sideways, and then push this plane iron up so that you only have about 1/16 of an inch gap at the end there with your sharpened plane iron. Okay, screw it down tight. When it goes back into the plane, it goes with that screw down into a little hole, or a little depression right there. Put that in there, and push the plane iron cap over top, and put that down. Then you will want to adjust your plane so that there's just a little bit of the plane iron blade extending through the bottom of the plane. That is done with an adjusting screw, and turned in the clockwise direction, it pushes it further through the plane bed, or turn in a counterclockwise direction, it moves it out or back up into and away from the bottom of the plane. You have another thing that's a lever that will adjust to make sure that plane iron or your cutting surface is flat with the bed of your plane. Now I would like to show you a little bit about how to use this. First, you want to make sure that you take a look at your piece of wood so that you're planing with the grain of the wood, meaning that the grain runs out and up to the surface of your wood. You want to plane in that direction. Have your material clamped down tightly. Take your plane, check for the correct angle. If your plane iron blade is higher on one side than it is on the other side, remember you have this lever here that can change that. Okay? With your plane in your driving hand and the other hand on the front knob, make sure that your plane is set down on the piece of material before the blade, so that it's a slight angle, and then start pushing this plane through the material from one end all the way to the other end. If it's difficult to do it, you can't do it, push it from one end all the way to the other end, then that means that you have too much blade exposed on the bottom of your plane, and you have to readjust. Okay? But by doing this manner, you should be able to get nice curls of wood, and you can take the edge of your material down to a specified place on the material that you want to plane off to. Okay, the block plane again is for planing the end piece of material. You start on one side holding it firmly in your hand, but you do not go all the way across. The reason you do not go across, all the way across is as you approach the edge of your material and that your plain iron catches the edge, it in most probability will just break it off of there rather than cutting through it. Therefore, the way you have to do that is you have to plane a little bit on one side, take your material out of your vise, turn it around, clamp it down, and then plane from the other direction. Another type of planing that you will have to do is surface planing, and to do that, like in all situations, you have to clamp your material. In this case, this is a cutting board, and we're going to start planing off the surface of this board. If we were to raise the vise dog in this manner, this hole down here in the bench top is too far, so we would have to loosen this vise, pull it out so that we get our bench stop into the first available hole that we can push against to clamp our material to keep it solid while we're planing on it. Okay, and then again we use probably the junior jack plane, keep it flat at a slight angle, adjust it so that we can push from one end all the way to the other end. And try to keep this so that you can start then planing your surface material down to get it flat. Again, make sure that you have all of your materials clamped, no matter in what position you're working, whether it's on the edge grain or the surface grain. Always clamp your materials, always have a good sharp plane, make sure your plane is adjusted properly. Use a slight angle anytime that you're planing on any surface. One other word of caution is when you're planing down the surface of a piece of material, if you plane too much on one side, then you're going to get that side low. It's a good idea to take, once in a while, maybe even lay your plane straight across your piece of material so that you can see where you're high and where you're low. So that where you're high, then plane that down, plane that area down a little bit, going back and forth, taking the material off. You think you get down to where it's about even, check it with your plane again along the length of your board to make sure that you're getting the high spots. Okay? In most woodworking shops, you will have an assortment of files ranging all the way down from, like this is a rasp because it has really coarse teeth and will take lots of material off at once, down to a file that has pretty fine teeth and will not take much material off at all. You'll also have different shapes of file, like this file is a flat file, this flat file is a half round file, this file is a round file, and this file is a triangular file. Okay, so we have different kinds of shapes as well as different kinds of cuts on the files. Basically what we use the file for in the woods area is for taking material off either edge or end grain. These rasp used to be really an important one back in the really old days, but anymore we have the band saws, we have saber saws, we have scroll saws. So that we don't use the rasp as much as we used to. What we do like to use the files for in our middle school shops is for filing down the end grain and then using it as a backup for sanding down the end grain to make, like on a cutting board, to make a really nice end on the cutting board. I have a cutting board here that is just basically been sawed off with a table saw. Put this in the vise, clamp it down, then I take a file, like this flat file with a relatively fine grain. I hold it across the end of the cutting board and start filing on this until I get all of the saw marks out. If I don't really feel that this is taking it off fast enough, I may get a different file like this half round file. The cut is a little bit coarser so that I could actually take more material off at one time using a file of this nature. Again, if you hold your file in this manner across the grain, it works much better than trying to just to go in a short stroke back and forth method. Start on one side and go clear across on to the other side with the file going across the grain of the wood. With this file held in your hands in this manner with the handle on in your right hand, it will cut on the forward stroke only. If you turn the file around and put the handle on your left hand side, it will cut on the pull stroke only. So therefore, depending on which way you want to cut your material, either in the right hand for a push stroke, in the left hand for a pull stroke. Also, another thing that's going to happen with your file is the fact that the grooves of the file are going to get filled up with materials, and you need to use a thing that's called a card file. I'm sorry, a file card. Okay, a card file is the thing you put your files into. This is a